Welcome to Threshold Albums, a show about music, the way it's affected us, formed us, changed us, and moved us from one world into another with no going back. I am Mark Davis, today's host, and I'm a songwriter and singer and lover of music. And today, my longtime friend, fellow musician, and fellow lover of music is going to be talking about one of his Threshold albums, which is Revolver by the Beatles.
Yep.
Welcome, Joe Hines.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm good.
Awesome.
So, in preparation for this little chat, had you write some notes a little bit about this record, and I've asked you to read a little passage from there that sort of is a summary of Revolver for you.
Sure. I'll share it. To me, Revolver was a wide, deep musical swimming pool where I first swam diving under the surface and feeling the water on every inch of my skin and then surfacing again. It was a soundtrack for my most innocent days, and it's been a friend I could lean on when I was broken. The fact that I went on to learn multiple instruments, taught myself to sing, played in school bands and garage bands and church choirs and the rest. I guess you could say that I was inspired by this album, maybe. Yeah.
Great. So let's talk about the time frame for this. So age, how it came to you.
Yeah. I actually can't remember a time when I didn't know the music on this album. It came out in '66, and I was a fine young strapping 1-year-old at the time. My dad was kind of, eclectic, really intelligent guy. He didn't like rock music at all. But he certainly saw that this was something that was going to be important. So when the album came out, he brought it home for me. And that was the stuff that I literally cut my teeth on.
So up to what age do you think you were? I mean, I know you're listening to it now still, but I mean this window of time that you would kind of see this as a threshold, because probably one is maybe a little bit, or like you said, you didn't remember hearing it then. So what age can you kind of see yourself listening to it?
Like 5,
Five.
yeah.
So you think it was a present to you?
Of sorts, yeah, probably. He got it for me.
So you knew that. So you grew up with this being your album.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have this little tiny toy record player, with the little speaker built into the top, and one of those tone arms that had the big fat needle on it. And most kids, I remember, were playing Disney records on theirs, and I was listening to Tomorrow Never Knows.
So you can remember that. You can remember putting the record on this little
Oh yeah,
record.
oh yeah, playing it until the grooves were almost worn all the way through. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, what does that room look like, or what is the where are you listening to this?
We lived in this 1920s vintage apartment building, and it was really, at the time, a really beautiful building, crown molding in all the rooms, and these old-fashioned radiators that the water ran through to heat the rooms up, and wooden floors. And my room was a combination of the den in the apartment and my bedroom, and I had this double bed in there that I slept in because it was a big enough room for that. And I remember the little record player being on the floor at the side of the bed. I can just picture this still. And then just listening to that thing over and over again. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
great. It might be difficult to put a finger on it because you're so young and you don't have a strong memory of who you were before listening to the record. But I mean, if you're gonna somehow summarize like what the threshold was, um, you know, in terms of what kind of door this opened up compared to who you were before and after. Um, how do you think it formed you or shaped you?
Certainly it did. Remember, I had been born in Latin America, and I was brought into the U.S. at a really young age, so that I don't really have any real memories at all of Colombia. But had I grown up in Colombia, my life would have gone a very different direction than it did having grown up in the US. And I don't necessarily remember, or I have no way of knowing what that other lifetime in an alternate universe growing up in Colombia would have been like.
Yeah.
But I do know that I made that move with my parents, and I grew up here, and I grew up a certain way. So that if my dad had given me a Glenn Campbell album in 1966, right? And that had been what I cut my teeth on, then probably my musical development and interests and things would have gone in a different direction again. And so I guess that's the best way I can put it.
So tell me the qualities that you treasure that you feel this album gave you.
Qualities of what? Of myself? Of what?
Yeah, of experience or
Well, I think I've always been, in certain respects, pretty adventurous, pretty open to new experiences. And I know I've always been really intrigued by music too, just the sound of it. And I know that that record was pretty challenging. All kinds of question marks float all through that album. New ideas, new approaches, new sounds. So, if that band was, like they say, that band was uh, influential in having changed our society in certain ways back in those days, because it made everybody rethink. So so perhaps all it did for me was say, well, there's all kinds of possibilities.
hmm.
And everything's interesting and everything's cool, and you don't need to reject anything, just be open to it. I think that's what it did for me.
Okay, so we're gonna play a little game here and we're gonna go through the songs one by one and you're gonna I've asked you to pick a word, one word that kind of describes that little boy 5 years old hearing these songs and what they kind of represented to you. And so the first song is Taxman.
Yeah, dream fantasy.
Cool. Tell me more about that.
I remember feeling, I thought the beginning where they're doing the count off and you can hear, some instrumentation warming up or whatever. I just, because they were speaking in these really low registered voices, I thought it sounded really scary. There's this cough and they're counting it down, and I thought, oh, that sounds scary to me. But I remember I used to frequently have dreams too at night where the Beatles were outside my apartment with me playing on the wooden stairs that went up from the ground floor up to the third and all the way up the side of the building. There was something kind of otherworldly about it. I don't know, just dreamlike.
Eleanor Rigby.
Earthy.
You talk about that. Earthy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the sense of like earthiness, like wood, like organic things. Like my parents' hi-fi record player was really uh, this big thing that occupied an entire room. Back in the '60s technology, but it had this strong smell of wood, and some of these other things that my parents had brought back from South America with them that also had that smell of wood about it, and that song with the acoustic nature of it and the earthiness of that. So I think all of that kind of just rolls around in my head and makes a little picture.
Next we have I'm Only Sleeping.
Yeah, jazz. Yeah, to me that song it is about the closest that band ever really came to doing sort of anything at all in a jazz like way. The beat has a swing or a shuffle to it. Um, the background vocals to me have this awesome. In my mind, they replaced horn riffs and things with their vocals, the way that they did them, and the way that they interwove with the rest of the music in the track.
So is this the adult Joe talking or is this the little boy talking?
I guess I don't necessarily have any strong memories from my childhood about this song in particular, but that's how the song strikes me today. That was what came to mind when I started thinking about it. That's the overriding thing that I can describe, because a lot of childhood memories, they're fleeting. They're transparent.
And that song doesn't have a strong
Yeah.
child childhood memory to
I
you.
know I always loved the song. But for most of the same reasons that I liked the album, and I think it was the vocals on the album that I really was most attracted to. I thought I still think it's probably their best vocal album.
Love You Too.
Yeah, exotic, because of the tambla. I mean, I wouldn't have known that then, but but it had that. I didn't know it was a sitar either, but there was a sitar and a tambla and a sort of like this droning that goes through the song. Scary again too, a little bit. It wasn't something that you experienced regularly. Some of the other songs were a lot more immediate, easier to relate to. This one, I always felt a little, I don't know what the word was, scary, but not in a horror movie kind of scary or anything, not in a danger kind of a scary, just in a, this is bigger than me and I don't know how to relate to it kind of a sense.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And that's probably present in a lot of the material,
Oh yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Here, there, and everywhere.
Tender is the adjective that comes to mind.
Yeah.
It's a really delicate song, and the vocals were in a pretty high end of their range. And I remember that I never could really recognize when one singer ended and another one picked up, because their voices were all, in my mind anyway, not today, because I've really, over 50 years, you learn, but
Yeah.
yeah, but at that age, I think it was about feminine and mother again, and soft and tender and that kind of thing.
Right. And especially in context with the rest of the album, where there's a lot of this edgy guitar, this edgy kind of this introduction of this edgy kind of jaggedy thing, right? In a lot of the songs.
The lead guitar is pretty acidic
Yeah.
for especially for then, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So this totally tender makes sense.
yeah, yeah.
She said,
fun, catchy, you know. Uh, uh, for sure, I never understood the words, you know, at that age, right? Who, you know, I can remember going around singing it, and I can't imagine what anybody who was an adult or anybody older than me at the time thought, because the lyrics were like, I know what it's like to be dead. So here's a little 5-year-old walking, I know what it's like to be dead. You know, really? I'm gonna have to get you some help quick.
But you weren't thinking at the time that there was anything wrong with it, though, right?
No,
And
no,
that's only back in retrospect. So there's like this naivete, I guess, that was coming through, obviously,
yeah,
which I think is, yeah, and also the sing-songiness of the song of the Beatles. I mean, because I can remember myself that as a child. I mean, there's just something immediate about so much of the music and sing song, stuff that you just want to sing to right away. So, yeah, the lyrics are just sort of this other thing that maybe you just don't,
right, right,
you don't grasp, and but that's pretty wild, um, of course.
yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Then I think I asked my dad for an LSD stamp, you know, so I could really trip and understand it better. 6 by then, so he went ahead and gave me one, you know, and I remember tripping for a week on that. It was awesome.
Joe, that's a joke, everybody. So, Good Day Sunshine.
Yeah, exciting. You know, the song just builds, you know, from the very beginning. It's just the repetition of originally just that one note, you know, on the piano, and I think it's got a bass underneath it, and then Ringo's cymbals and snare kind of build it up. But yeah, it's got this like forward momentum thing, like here's a train coming, you know. It's, I guess, is the closest thing that I could imagine that or liken that to. Yeah, yeah, so exciting. It was fun.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah.
Great. And Your Bird Can Sing.
That that could be one of their best songs, period, bar none, ever. And I always loved it because of the guitar on it and how melodic that guitar that kind of does it. It's a counterpoint to the rest of the song, you know, point counterpoint. And I just always loved it because of that. Now, mind you, I was a little kid growing up in a home that was really filled with a lot of music, but classical and jazz in particular, because that was my dad and my mom respectively.
Yeah.
Um, and in some ways, that little song has a lot of classical elements to it,
Mm.
and I just loved it. Yeah, yeah.
For No One, one word.
Musicality. The thing that from the beginning that I loved always about
One
that
word.
was, I think it was a harpsichord, wasn't it? And or was it a piano? I don't remember exactly right now.
It's a clavichord and a piano that McCartney's playing, and then the rest is Ringo, and then the French horn player. George Martin was, he's the classical guy, so he was, I think at this time he was just they were looking for weird instruments to use and stuff, so he would just introduce stuff and to
Yeah,
them
yeah.
he would say, "Oh, what's tell me another instrument," and they would just try things. So
Those two things, I just thought they were really beautiful from a really early age.
Dr. Robert, one word.
It reminds me a lot of She Said, She Said. So I would say again, catchy, fun, you know, upbeat. Yeah, I just thought it was a great song. You know, yeah, yeah, and obviously there's all kinds of stories about that song now, but you know,
I Want to Tell You.
that's another one of those songs that was edgy, and I don't know if and I think it was. Um, yeah, it was very edgy and kind of scary again. But man, I played the hell out of it. You know, yeah.
What do you think was scary about it?
The lead guitar lines that flow through it, are interesting and very unique. Dun, da, 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 dun, da, 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 da. That piece, um, especially with there's a backbeat against it, I think. And in my mind, for some reason, I always, how we listen to music and we picture things. I always imagine for some reason this boot, toe tapping to keep the time, but I don't know why. But these are just the weird images that come back to me,
Yeah.
you know. But
Yeah.
it was something about the rhythm, and it was something about the lead guitar figures that go over it, and um,
It goes to that weird chord, that da na 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 na, that like half thing.
creates this what you call it, tension, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's, I'm sure, what I was responding to also.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a pretty great album because it took you in so many different places, more so
Right.
than almost any other records.
Right. So, got to get you into my life.
The thing that I remembered was just the sound of the brass, the horns on it, which I just thought was really exciting. And again, it was just a different sound that hadn't been anywhere else on the album yet.
Yeah.
And I remember that, yeah, that, and I remember also the other thing that I really loved about it was the way that the vocals at the end fade out. He's kind of doing that little jamming, and just the brass and that fade out to me are the things that always, I just inspirational in a lot of ways. Just great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Going through all the songs, it's almost like each one is a threshold next to the other song, right?
Yeah.
It keeps shifting, even though there's something that sort of somehow ties it together. You do have these different rooms that you're going into from song to song, like the brass coming in at, this is almost the end of the album, so that's an interesting thing that I'm hearing coming through as we're talking through the record.
It's an adventurous record.
Yeah. Yeah. So Tomorrow Never Knows, our last track.
Yeah.
One word.
Mythic. Like in the sense of like a Viking myth or something. This big, huge, I don't know what, this presence that's sort of approaching, like a storm cloud or something big, ominous, about that song. And if any of it was scary, that song with the backwards guitar and the weird seagull sound effects and all of the backward stuff and the there's a keyboard on there too that does some weird things, and then Ringo's very original drum pattern to it. Yeah, mythic. Yeah. Just
Pretty wild to have that as your first kind of, I would say, baptism into the musical world. I mean, that's a pretty varied and deep, and I mean deep, I mean that there's a lot of places to go inside of it. But for you, this was, I mean, you just accepted this. You went along for the ride wherever they were taking you.
I didn't have any pre-established rules that said this is good, this is bad, this is proper form, this is not, this is acceptable, this is what we do. You know what I mean? It was,
So you were able to go on these adventures,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
or on this adventure of this album, which has many adventures.
You know, I've had this memory for many, many years. It's related to what we're talking about, but it's not the same topic. But when I was in junior high school, I had a friend of mine who took me to the river with his family for a weekend. I'd never been there. And when we got there, I got into the river to swim, and that current is super fast. In fact, it takes all your energy to stand and not get swept along with it. And the great thing that I learned on that little occasion, the life lesson that I've always had since then, is it's okay to take your feet off the bottom and just go with the river and see where it takes you. You know, it can be really fun and exciting to do that. And
And that's what happened. That's what happened with this record.
yeah,
Yeah. You didn't even think twice about it. It was just you were just in that river because of the circumstances that
yeah,
you were born into.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Cool. Cool. So I've got another section that I'm asking you to read is a summary as our closing.
Revolver set my musical taste early in life, which is actually pretty good tutelage for somebody who's remained so steeped in music to this very day. There's actually never been a time when I didn't know this album, and every guitar solo, drum beat, count off, French horn solo, etc. on it. The very first version of it I had was worn through by playing on a child's record player. The kind with the built-in speaker on the top and a hinged removable top. And for years, it was the only record I owned until my dad came home with another album for me, Simon Edgar Funkel's Greatest Hits in early 1970s. I got to know Revolver so well that I could actually fully imagine every song and every note to completion in my memory. I didn't need to play the album. I was the album.
Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.